Hello, hello. Thank you so much for having us. I know we're the last session of today, so hopefully you enjoy it. But you've obviously saved the best till last, haven't you? So, just to introduce ourselves, hello, I'm Claire Johnson. I head up our customer success team here at the Professional Alternative, and I'm joined by my colleague Alex Burnett. I guess she's that way, isn't she? So obviously she's going to be the key speaker for today. But before she gets started, I just wanted to talk to you very briefly about the Professional Alternative, just to check that you know a little bit about us. I appreciate we're fairly new to the QS membership firms. And I really want to start engaging with you guys. I know we've been working with a lot of the quality solicitors firms, and we've been doing a lot to help with their risk and compliance training. So the Professional Alternative, who are we? What do we do? We essentially provide risk and compliance training alongside personal development training. So we have lots of different media formats. We're a multimedia platform, and we're all about bite-sized learning. So what we've been doing with a lot of the QS firms that we've started engaging with is we've been onboarding them, registering them, and just really making sure that that process is really tailored to their firms. So we do specifically work with legal and accountancy firms, so we understand what it's like to be in a law firm, and trying to make time for all that personal development and risk and compliance training can be really, really challenging. So what we're doing with those firms is we're really supporting them with that risk and compliance schedule. So what we're doing is we're sending those courses directly into people's inboxes. We're utilizing our NAGWare solution to really chase those people to complete. And then we're automating that reporting so you can track their progress along the way. So that's a lot of what we're doing. The other part of what we do is personal development. So it's all those kind of soft skills, human skills, personal intelligence, that kind of thing. As part of that, we offer lunch and learn sessions. So the end of every month, normally the last Friday of every month, we have a guest speaker such as Alex, the lovely Alex, who's joining us today. I should go that way. It's the opposite way round. And those lunch and learn sessions are normally 30 minutes long. They are chosen by our members. So we offer our members the option to choose the topic, and then Alex comes along and helps us out with those sessions. All of those sessions are recorded and they go on the site the same day, so you can watch them back at your leisure. So that's all from me. So I'm going to hand over to Alex, but I'd really encourage you, if you haven't already got in touch with the Professional Alternative, please do. Please get in touch at support@theprofessionalalternative.com. And Alex is going to give you a snippet of what our lunch and learn sessions look like. So over to you, Alex. Oh, we can't hear you, Alex.
I was just testing you, making sure we're all paying attention. There we go. Okay, great. Hopefully you can all hear me now. Do give me a Y in the chat box if you can hear me. Because also I know this is the last session, but I do have some questions for you, and I'd love to get your input and actually on this session so that we can we can make this really tailored to you. And I, as Claire well knows, I like a bit of engagement, and I'm not here just to talk at you. I am here as an engagement and behavior strategist. That is my job, is to make sure that this is tailored for you and is really relevant for what you need in your business. So this session is all going to be about building client relationships and really developing that kind of sense of commercial awareness in your business. So fantastic. We got some yays, we got some yeses. Really great to meet you all today. Right, as we go on. So in this session, what I'm going to be covering is what makes a strong relationship. How do we meet client needs? How can we go about building those relationships and that commercial awareness? And what are the challenges that you can overcome really easily? So with that, I'd love to ask you the following question. What does building relationships mean to you? What does it look like to build a good relationship? How do you know that you've got one? Have a real think about a relationship that you have in your business in terms of client relationships. But one really easier and quick way to think of this is actually by turning it around on its head. Recently, in the last week, for instance, and maybe in the last 2 weeks, I want you to think of a relationship where you were the client, and what made it good? What made that fantastic? what really stood out. I will share one. I'll share one with you, which is weirdly a chimney sweep. We actually had our wood burner, you know, the chimney sweep in for the winter cleaning, as it were, and to do the safety certificate. And actually, I came home yesterday, and I noticed those lovely blue plant pot I have in the window ledge outside, and it was missing. I asked my husband where it had gone, and he said, "Oh, really sorry, Lee, the chimney sweep actually broke it on his way in." And I said, "Oh no, I loved it. I love that plant pot." I was a bit upset, and he said, "Yeah, but he refused to take any payment for the thing." And I said, "Well, actually, hang on a second. That sounds ridiculous, because that was a £10 plant pot, and I can go get another one. It's just more the emotional, for some reason, value that I've put upon this lovely blue plant pot." And at which case, the customer service that went in is that he was actually going to refuse to take any payment for the entire service that he provided, and he provided a great prompt delivery of service. So now he has gone a long way to build on that. And of course, I said, that is not going to happen. Make sure we get that invoice, and we're going to pay that in full. It's not a problem. But the fact that there was a gesture there, and he went out of his way, not even to say he'd take £10 off, but he was going to go that extra level because he was mortified, and he really wanted to build our trust and that relationship with us, really made me see how much he valued the relationship with us and things like that. So do share with me one word where you think building what makes a relationship great in terms of building a client relationship, either for you as the client or for your clients with you. What is one word that comes to mind? And I want you to pop that into the chat box for me. So I'm going to start picking on you in a second, and I'm going to check in. Trust, says Paul Richmond. Yes, Nicola Lee, trust. Oh, I'm going to see a similar theme here. Communication, lovely. Keep going, keep piling them all in and seeing what we can think. And I love this quote here about that key is when a customer walks away thinking, wow, I love doing business with them, and I want to tell everyone else about that experience. And that happens when we are delighted, when we've met that net promoter score of above 8 or more, where people go, yes, that's standing out in my mind as something that where I feel valued. So, okay, we're looking at what makes a strong client relationship. Now, here we've got some key ingredients. We've got a bit of trust. We've got communication, respect, says Scott. That's interesting. Respect as well. So there's a common ground. Transparency. I love that. And yes, understanding. Okay, fantastic. We're building up these wonderful elements. And again, I wonder if you have thought of something, if something has come to mind where you've gone, I've got a great relationship. I can have that transparency. I can have that understanding. I have that respect between each other when we're building these relationships. So that is what we need to start thinking of, is what are these key ingredients and how are we making it work? And ideally, now there's a brilliant guy called Graham, and he runs something, and he calls it the VIP customer success experience, or celebrity success experience, which is where you kind of have an element where you put the white gloves on and you roll out the red carpet for people. Now, it doesn't mean to say that the customer is always right, because as an expert, we actually sometimes have to have that respect that you've mentioned to challenge people and say, actually, we know what the best way forward is for you, and we're going to help you with our expertise. But that still means we kind of need to wrap this in a bow with a bit of a VIP experience where we help build that relationship by making people feel that they can trust you, that they are able to be open and transparent with you, because let's face it, sometimes it can be a bit tricky with relationships. We think they can be equal and balanced, but at the end of the day, sometimes we have a knowledge of what the client needs and the client isn't on the same page. There is what they want and what we feel they need, and sometimes we need to bridge that gap together. Now, one of the most interesting things is, of course, when we're dealing with people and building relationships, is actually we feel that maybe building trust and having great communication, it sounds entirely logical. This is great. But human beings are not logical. And that's one of the things that we deal with on a daily basis, is that we could potentially treat people like machines, like robots, and maybe that would make life a bit easier. But that's not always the way it works. One of my favorite people to quote is a guy called Rory Sutherland, who's the chairman of Ogilvy, and he has a fantastic quote, which is great to bear in mind when building relationships, which is that the human brain no more runs on petrol no more runs on logic than a horse runs on petrol. Now, the reason why this is really important to realize is because there's emotions such as fear, such as overwhelm, such as apathy, that we need to fight through when building relationships. Even, in fact, last night I was having a conversation with someone who had been a really tricky customer. He'd been really very cold, difficult to get hold of, sending a lot of mixed signals. And then, as it turns out, it's because he'd actually misunderstood the conversation we were having. And then we ended up on the phone for an hour, having a fantastic conversation, meeting, going to meet up for a coffee. And suddenly we broke down this barrier that had been put up because there was a fear about he thought it was a sales conversation we were having, and that wasn't the case. So suddenly, by just understanding that there was fear there, we're able to actually approach the relationship in a different way. So what can get in the way in terms of what's happening with you guys? First of all, legal jargon and complex language. This can really create that barrier. And as I said, overwhelm is a big thing, and apathy. When we speak in professional terminology and languages, it can mean that sometimes we break that trust. We are not being transparent, and we're not talking the language of the client. So it can be really important to make sure that there's not a barrier in the relationship that's coming up because we're using language that people simply don't understand, that makes them feel stupid, that makes them feel undervalued because they're not quite sure what you're talking about. And the worst thing we can ever do is make a client feel like they're feeling a bit daft. Time constraints as well is that we don't have time, or you don't have time, and your time is at a premium. So that can really get in the way of building a great relationship. To actually enjoy that time and set aside time in your week when you have so much to do is a huge thing that gets in the way. Unrealistic client expectations, I think. I think we could all recognize this one, is unrealistic client expectations do get in the way. And so it can be very important to be able to have that ability to manage those expectations. Emotional distance. Well, this could be a reflection on the work that is taking place, the potential stress, or any of those, again, the emotional reactions to the work that's taking place. And again, that is where managing and building those relationships, it comes up to you. The next is on focus on technical skills. That can get in the way as well, because we're too busy trying to be too clever potentially with the way that we communicate, or the methodologies that we communicate in, is that then again we end up creating a barrier that impacts our time as well as the client expectations. So which one do you feel is if you had to pick one of those, or if you had one to add, which one would you choose? If we're going to go from the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can pick which one is it that you are choosing. So I'm going to go, number 1 is legal jargon, number 2, time, number 3, unrealistic client expectations, number 4, emotional distance, and number 5, focus on technical skills. Pop into the chat, which one do you feel is the next one? So I'm going to see if we're getting any. Which one do you feel could be impacting your relationship? Time on both sides. Yes, that's a really great point as well. It's not just time on when your time, it is your client's time as well. Anyone else going to pop into the chat? Number 2, time. Lovely. Going to give it a second and keep going. Number 2, I feel like if we've got a theme here, it's definitely time. How do you build in extra time to build those relationships? Yeah, 2, time. We've got lots of time on our side. So beautifully, you've answered the next question, is what is stopping you from building those relationships? What is holding you back? And it is your schedule and it is your client's schedule. I think we can work with that. So tell me something. What are you doing at the moment to find time to build those client relationships? What can you do to get out there? And what little elements can you do to build trust, have understanding and transparency that is time efficient? I'd love to hear from you what you are doing now in terms of what's stopping you. I'm going to have a bit of a chat break. Going to see if anyone's, what are you doing at the moment? Now, there are several techniques that we can do to actually build client relationships. It could be that you are going out and networking. That's a great space for doing that, because although networking can be a bit terrifying, it can be a case of actually arranging all your clients in one space for you to be seen. And it's kind of doing it at scale, which is where you can go around a room, even virtually. Something even like this is building client relationships. You're making them feel valued. You are getting out there and having that time. What else could you be doing? Working around clients. Sorry, I'm just distracted by comments that are coming in. Working around clients. Nicola, could you expand on that? Is that working around the client's schedule in what you're doing? Understanding, first of all, what can actually break, going back to what I was saying there, networking is a great resource. Working around your clients, I'm going to go with Nicola, around their schedule can be fantastic as well. But it is a case of making sure that you are actually pulling up a weekly list of activities and actions that you are going to commit to, because the problem with relationship building is it often gets nudged down. Now, how important out of 10 would you say it is to your business to being effective in your role to build relationships? And this is the tricky bit. This is the bit where it gets very difficult, because we can often think, it's like eating broccoli. We know that it's good for us. We know that it's important, or drinking your glasses of water a day. But how often do we prioritize it? Because it ends up not being, if you think about your Eisenhower matrix about being urgent and important, it ends up never being urgent, but we know it's important. So what the best thing is to do is, when we're thinking about the relationships, is how can we structure it to be super duper important? So we're going to look at what you currently do to engage with your clients. Now, give me some ideas. So we've got Nicola's given me working around clients. How many of you are meeting your clients on a regular basis? Would you like to do more or less? How many of you are having conversations on a daily basis with clients that are useful and productive and empowering and enhancing? And there is a fabulous quote from Susan Scott. There's a book called Fierce Conversations, which is the fact that every conversation you have can either harm or enhance your relationship. And that is where you end up transforming, is what is this conversation doing? Is it harming the relationship, or are we adding value and enhancing it? So I'm going to give you a few exercises now as we're coming towards the end of our session. Now, the first thing in building relationships that's really forget all of the techniques, all of the bits and pieces that you can do in terms of what that looks like. The first most important thing that you can do to have better relationships with your clients is purely to listen. And I know this sounds like the most obvious thing, but again, like drinking your water or drinking broccoli, you can easily, in your busy day-to-day lives and your clients, we forget that beautiful art of listening, because we're so busy thinking about the next thing, thinking about the value that we have to provide, that we fail and stop and fail to actually sit and listen to people. So here's some exercises for you. Now, on the TPA, on the platform, you can find lots of little exercises. And at the end, I'm going to put lots of links up. So do make sure you speak to Claire or get in touch with support to get yourself registered on the TPA to find our little bite-sized exercises. And this is one of them, a little sample of it. When it comes to listening, what we want is full attention, full focus, no phones and gadgets and bleeping that can distract us entirely, and it can make someone feel like they're not being heard at all. Now, if you've ever been into the courtroom, you'll know, of course, and there is such a value to giving someone space to be heard. And a lot of the time, that's all that needs to be done. All we need to do is give someone that time and space. It is unbelievably valuable to be able to do that, to not fidget. Now, I am a classic fidget, but it does get distracting to really look at someone and to give them your time and attention without fidgeting, giving them gentle eye contact, not staring them out, but giving them eye contact, and then really noticing what's happening around them. Are they uncomfortable? Are they fidgeting? Are they looking stressed? Are they giving you any signs that you can pick up upon that can really help you listen and engage and make them feel heard? Build that trust, build that relationship of transparency. And that's what we call active listening. So that's what I'd say. What would you say is really great listening? When was the last time someone gave you that opportunity to really be heard, really listen to you? When do you notice that listening isn't happening? When someone's zoning out, or they're thinking of something else, or they're waiting for you to finish what you're saying so they can just talk in next. And what gets in the way of really great listening for you? A lot of the time these days, it's notifications. So that is one of the first steps, I'd say, is if you're going to do anything, do some fantastic listening and do practice. It is harder than you think to be an active listener. Next up, I'm going to be delivering this relationship building canvas. Now, one of the things when we're listening for is to say, well, actually, how can we build that trust and transparency and great communication? Well, I've written down here a series of steps for you to follow when you are building your relationships and doing some fantastic listening. The first step is really understand your client goals and objectives. How well versed are you in what they believe they need? So as I mentioned at the start of this, is that there is a very big difference between what you know they need as an expert and what they feel they need. So make sure that you're very clear on what that looks like, on what their goals are, on why they want to achieve it, and really dig deep in and ask those important questions. So much more than commercial questions as well. Why is it important to them? What motivates them? What really irritates them? What's stressing them out and keeping them up? Ask those. The next one is the fact that we all communicate in very different ways. I actually do DISC communication. We have a lot of resources about DISC and all different styles of communication in terms of are you task focused? Are you quick talking? Are you more reflective and pausing? I think you talked about this earlier today as well. So really adapt to the client's communication style. Become detectives about who they are, and because they're giving clues all the time in the way they talk. I talk quite fast, so you could probably tell a little bit about me, and then adapt to their style. Figure out what it is they need. Do they need more information? Do they need to know how you arrived at a conclusion? Do they not care at all and they want you to get straight to the point because they're busy and that's just how they like to be communicated with? Do they need you to ask about their dog and their weekend? Figure that out. Make sure you list it down. Then really figure out, again, going back to the client goals and objectives, you can talk about their needs and what their pain points and address those critical challenges directly. And that's when suddenly you can really give that value. Once those 3 steps, you'll notice are all about listening to the client. And then suddenly you can give them that value proposition, and then follow up. And the fortune is in the feedback, as they say. So always go back to that feedback. Your unhappiest client is the most valuable to you, and that you can find out so much more about how to build better relationships. And now, as we come back to the end of our session, and I just realised it's 1 minute past, I'm going to give you a few tips for building better client relationships as we go on to as you come onto the system. So I think it's support at theprofessionalalternative.com. Set yourselves up, because there are so many, like 2 to 5 minute to 30-minute sessions that you can learn that will really build up more on your relationship skills. So you will see sessions from me, but there are also sessions from I've listed some here. We've got clients and collaborations. We've got about the client journey. We've got about DISC. We have got so many tools and resources for you to check out. So on that note, I'm going to ask you one more thing, which is, what are you going to do? What step in the client canvas are you going to focus on to build better client relationships? And with that, I'm going to pass over and say thank you so much for having me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Alex. We really hope you enjoyed today's session. If you'd like to join our next Lunch and Learn session on the Professional Alternative, please do get in touch. I know we've mentioned it a couple of times, but support at theprofessionalalternative.com. We'd love to get your firm onboarded. It's a really tailored experience for your firm. And we can get you all set up so you can join our next Lunch and Learn session with Alex. Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
Sorry, we had our own technical issue there. Damien kept putting me on the stage and I kept removing myself, trying to put myself on the stage. Thank you so much, Alex and Claire. It's funny because some of the things that you were mentioning in this session were very similar to a slightly different approach that Paul delivered this morning on the Grow Group session. But I quickly scribbled down again, personal reflection. That is what both of your sessions have given me. In terms of, I'm now standing to present from home. I'm trying not to fidget. I've actively been listening and writing notes all day. So I love the fact that you can do the exercises online. So I'll certainly go on to the TPA platform to find those as well. And I think some of the other things I wrote down, time constraints. So again, one of the topics or one of the answers that came up this morning with the Grow Group session was about time. And actually both Alex and Paul had already kind of preempted that that's what the answers were going to be. And I imagine the reason for that is because you're working with so many law firms and it's about sharing the knowledge and the pain points that, you know, each individual firm isn't alone. You know, this is kind of an ongoing issue and you're here to support them and to develop them to help with overcoming these issues. So again, this takes us back to kind of our power of many pillar that says, you know, it's about knowledge sharing, expertise and trying to put some support in place to help develop the firms as part of quality solicitors. So yes, very interesting that that assumption was there, but the right assumption, because again, you know, it naturally led into that. And finally, let me just see what else I wrote down just to finish off this section as well, and just see if anybody's got any more comments. I guess the first comment I made was around the legal jargon, and that's very difficult sometimes if you're dealing with a complex matter, to get caught up in, you know, trying to explain something, but it's too complicated. So I wrote down that the approach isn't a one approach and it's not one size fits all. You have to be adaptable. You have to learn and understand your client and kind of what their approach is and how they need to be spoken to and kind of breaking those things down. And I guess, again, that comes down to time. So yeah, a very well-informed session again. Thank you very much.
Oh no, I was going to say sometimes with complexities, I don't know who here has children or talks to children, and it can sometimes feel a bit like you might be at risk of patronizing, but actually taking the opportunity to try and explain something very complex to a 5 or 7-year-old can actually help you break it down into really manageable storytelling for clients, and then it gives you opportunities to think about it, which is it can be a good exercise.
Yeah, Another good top tip there. Find a small child.
That you're able to talk to.
Not just any random child.
But it makes it you suddenly realize how quickly how difficult it is. The advertising industry are great at this and breaking down complexities into just 6 words, so it's a good exercise.
Absolutely. And when you're dealing with it day in, day out, it makes sense to you, but it's and we've had similar when we've had new people join the team, and we think the languages that we use, and everybody knows that, but they don't. And so you have to think from the other side of it, how can we explain exactly what that is, and we put that into the marketing materials as well. We need people to understand what are people searching for. They're not necessarily searching on the specific legal word, they're searching on a word that means something more to them to try and find the advice that they need. So it's kind of trying to break it down in that sense as well.